She thinks she deserves the world, not because of what she's accomplished, not because of what she's contributed, but because she exists. You've seen her on dating apps demanding six-figure salaries while offering nothing in return, on social media expecting validation for the most mundane moments, in relationships treating partners like accessories to her lifestyle. She's everywhere now, the girl who expects the royal treatment but has never built a kingdom, who demands respect but shows none, who wants to be chosen but has made herself unchoosable. You think this is just modern dating culture, just social media narcissism, just another generation being entitled. You think it's about bad parenting or participation trophies or feminist ideology gone wrong. But you're missing something crucial, something that runs deeper than culture, deeper than upbringing, deeper than any social movement. Carl Jung saw this coming a century ago, and what he discovered about the human psyche explains why this entitlement isn't surface-level selfishness. It's something much darker, much deeper, and much more dangerous than you realize. This isn't about women being inherently flawed. This is about a specific psychological pattern that Jung identified, one that's been weaponized by our modern culture and turned into an epidemic of inflated egos living in a fantasy world where reality is optional and consequences don't exist. Look around you. The signs are everywhere, and once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. She wants everything but offers nothing. Must be tall, must make six figures, must have his own house, must be emotionally available, must be ambitious, must be ready to commit, must. But what does she bring? What's her contribution to this equation? Look at her profile, look at her life, look at her actual accomplishments. You'll find a list of demands disguised as knowing her worth. The same pattern plays out everywhere. Social media posts humble bragging about problems that aren't really problems. So stress choosing between these two amazing opportunities. Crying in my new car because life is overwhelming. It's not about having standards. It's about having expectations without reciprocity. The common thread, an expectation that the world owes them something simply for existing. This isn't about all women. This is about a specific psychological pattern Jung identified that's become epidemic in our culture. Walk into any coffee shop and you'll see her, the girl on her laptop with the CEO mindset stickers, calling herself an entrepreneur while selling other people's products through affiliate links. She posts daily about her journey and growth, but when you look closer, there's no actual business, no real skills, no tangible value creation. Just endless content about being a boss babe who knows her worth. Go to any networking event, and she's there too, the one who shows up not to contribute or learn, but to be discovered. She talks about her vision and her brand, but when you ask specific questions about what she's actually built, the answers get vague fast. I'm in the wellness space. I help women step into their power. I'm building something revolutionary. Translation. She's selling courses about selling courses, or coaching other women to become coaches, or creating content about creating content. The circular emptiness is staggering, but somehow she's convinced herself, and often others, that she's a visionary, a leader, a queen building her empire. Watch her on dating apps. She doesn't just want a partner, she wants a benefactor, someone to fund her lifestyle while she finds herself and builds her brand. Someone to provide the resources for her self-actualization journey. The bio reads like a job posting for a personal assistant who also provides emotional labor, financial support, and social validation. But here's the thing that makes this pattern so insidious. She genuinely believes she deserves all of this. This isn't conscious manipulation or calculated gold digging. This is something much more psychologically complex. She's living in what Jung would recognize as a complete disconnect from reality, a psychological inflation so severe that she can't distinguish between her fantasies about herself and the actual facts of her life. Carl Jung didn't just study the mind. He mapped the territories of human delusion that most people never see. While others were focused on conscious behavior, Jung dove into the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the psychological mechanisms that create our blind spots, and what he discovered about feminine psychology in particular was revolutionary and controversial and completely misunderstood by modern culture. Jung identified something he called the anima projection, a psychological process where people project their idealized self-image onto the world and expect reality to conform to it. But in our current culture, this projection has mutated into something Jung never could have predicted. Consider the woman complaining about not finding good men while maintaining impossible standards. Your friend constantly talks about knowing her worth, but has never actually built anything of value. The colleague expects promotion without performance, recognition without contribution. Jung had a name for this psychological phenomenon. He called it inflation, when the ego becomes so identified with an idealized image that it loses touch with reality. This inflation isn't random. It serves a psychological function. It protects the ego from confronting its own inadequacy. Where does this inflation originate? Why is it so prevalent now when it was rare just a generation ago? The answer lies in something Jung never could have predicted: the weaponization of human psychology through social media. Each selfie that receives 200 likes triggers a dopamine release in her brain, the same neurochemical reward that cocaine produces. She's literally getting high off digital validation from strangers who don't know her, don't care about her, and will forget her existence within minutes. The algorithm is designed to keep her addicted to this false validation while simultaneously making her feel inadequate. It shows her the highlight reels of other women's lives, their vacations, relationships, achievements, while she sits in her apartment in yesterday's clothes, scrolling endlessly. This creates what psychologists call a comparison trap. She's constantly measuring her behind the scenes against everyone else's highlight reel. Instead of motivating her to improve her actual life, it motivates her to improve her online persona. So she doubles down on the fantasy. Better angles, superior filters, enhanced captions about her journey and growth. She starts believing her own marketing. The metrics become her reality. Followers equal worth. Likes equal validation. Comments equal social proof. She begins confusing her digital persona with her actual self. Jung understood that when you live in fantasy long enough, you lose the ability to distinguish between what's real and what's constructed. The persona, what Jung called the mask we wear for the world, starts feeling more real than the person wearing it. She's not consciously trying to deceive anyone. She genuinely believes she is the curated version of herself she presents online. The successful entrepreneur, the high-value woman, the queen who deserves the best. Social media doesn't just enable this delusion, it requires it. The platforms profit from her insecurity and her need for validation. They've created an economy where self-worth is the currency and the house always wins. These apps are designed by teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists whose job is to hack the human reward system. They've figured out exactly how often to give her validation to keep her hooked, and exactly how often to withhold it to keep her desperate. She believes she's building a brand, but she's actually constructing a prison where her self-worth depends entirely on the whims of an algorithm controlled by people who see her as nothing more than data points and ad revenue. The more validation she receives online, the more disconnected she becomes from real-world feedback. The more likes she gets for her boss babe posts, the less likely she is to develop actual business skills. The more comments she receives on her beauty photos, the less likely she is to develop her personality or character. Social media has created what Jung would recognize as a collective psychosis, millions of people living in elaborate fantasies while calling it authentic self-expression. Reality doesn't care about your follower count. Physics doesn't respond to your affirmations. Economics doesn't bend to your self-proclaimed worth. Eventually, every fantasy crashes into the wall of objective truth. Nowhere is this psychological inflation more visible or more destructive than in the modern dating marketplace. She opens her dating app and sees 500 matches in her first week. Dating apps are designed around infinite choice. There's always another swipe, another match, another possibility. This creates what psychologists call choice overload, when too many options lead to decision paralysis and chronic dissatisfaction. She starts believing that if she can get attention from hundreds of men online, she deserves the absolute best of what's available. Why settle for the accountant when there might be a CEO just one swipe away? Why commit to the teacher when there could be a doctor in tomorrow's batch? This is hypergamy amplified by technology. The natural female tendency to seek the highest status mate available gets hijacked by platforms that create the illusion of unlimited high-status options. What she doesn't understand about male psychology, the men with the most options, the ones she actually wants, are the least likely to commit to someone who has no unique value proposition beyond physical attractiveness. High-value men have access to beautiful women constantly. What they're actually seeking is something rare: genuine femininity, emotional maturity, loyalty, and the ability to add value to their life beyond just looking good in photos. Instead, she's optimized herself for short-term attraction while making herself unsuitable for long-term commitment. She's playing checkers while high-value men are playing chess. The apps reward her for being hot and demanding, not for being wife material. So she gets better at attracting players and worse at attracting men who want to build something real. She confuses sexual interest with relationship interest, attention with respect, and options with value. Because men want to sleep with her, she assumes they should also want to marry her and fund her lifestyle. Sexual marketplace value and relationship marketplace value are different currencies. She's rich in one and bankrupt in the other, but she can't tell the difference. The tragic irony: the more matches she gets, the more entitled she becomes, and the more entitled she becomes, the less attractive she is to the kind of man she actually wants to end up with. She's trapped in a cycle where her digital success makes her real-world failure more likely. The validation she receives online prevents her from developing the qualities that would make her successful offline. When reality finally hits, when the high-value men she wants don't want her for anything serious, she doesn't question her strategy. She doubles down on her demands and blames men for not recognizing her worth. Jung would ask, what worth? What has she actually built that would make a successful man want to choose her over all his other options? This pattern persists because she's not creating this delusion in isolation. She's being actively enabled by an entire ecosystem that profits from keeping her disconnected from reality. First, there are the men who enable her. The simps, white knights, desperate guys who think that if they just validate her enough, she'll finally choose them. They flood her comments with heart-eye emojis and queen statements. They send her money on Venmo for existing. They compete to be her emotional tampon while she dates men who ignore her. These men believe they're being nice, but they're actually participating in her psychological destruction. Every time they tell her she's perfect exactly as she is, they remove another opportunity for her to face reality and grow. Broader cultural messaging has been weaponized to keep women in a state of entitled inflation. Feminist slogans that were once about legal equality have been twisted into psychological manipulation. You deserve everything. Never settle. Know your worth. You're a queen. Notice what's missing from these messages. Any mention of what you need to become to deserve what you want. Any discussion of personal responsibility, skill development, or character building. It's all about demanding and receiving, never about earning and giving. This messaging is incredibly profitable for certain industries. The beauty industry needs women to believe they're already perfect, while simultaneously selling them products to improve themselves. The self-help industry needs women to feel both entitled to success and frustrated by their lack of it. The entertainment industry needs women to live vicariously through fantasies instead of building real lives. An entire industry of female entrepreneurs makes money teaching other women to be equally delusional. Instagram coaches who sell courses on manifesting abundance while living off their boyfriend's income. Business mentors whose only business is teaching other women to start businesses that don't actually produce anything. They've created a circular economy of delusion where women pay other women to validate their fantasies about themselves. It's multi-level marketing for the ego. Older women, mothers, aunts, female friends, enable this behavior because they've never learned to set boundaries themselves. They watch their daughters and nieces make the same mistakes they made, but instead of offering wisdom, they offer support for clearly destructive patterns. You deserve better, honey. He doesn't know what he's missing. You're too good for him anyway. They mistake enabling for love, validation for support. They think they're being good feminists by never challenging a woman's choices, no matter how obviously self-destructive those choices are. Jung understood that real love sometimes requires confronting people with uncomfortable truths about themselves. Real support sometimes means letting someone fail so they can learn. Real feminism would encourage women to develop genuine strength, not just the illusion of strength. The entire system is designed to keep her in a state of perpetual adolescence, always wanting, never building, always demanding, never earning, always feeling entitled, never feeling grateful. Everyone who enables her thinks they're helping her. The simps think they're showing respect. The culture thinks it's empowering women. The industries think they're meeting consumer demand. They're all participating in what Jung would recognize as a collective shadow projection, everyone avoiding the uncomfortable truth that growth requires discomfort and real value requires real work. She's not just entitled by accident, she's entitled by design. Until someone loves her enough to stop enabling her delusions, she'll remain trapped in a psychological prison that everyone around her is helping to build. Look deeper into her finances, and you'll discover the house of cards supporting this lifestyle of entitlement. She posts photos from expensive restaurants, but check her credit card statements. She's financing her high-value woman lifestyle with debt. The designer handbag, financed. The luxury vacation, put on credit. The lease on that BMW, stretching her budget to the breaking point. She's living as if she already has the lifestyle she believes she deserves, hoping that projecting success will attract the resources to sustain it. It's fake it till you make it, taken to pathological extremes. Her Instagram shows her at rooftop bars and trendy brunches, but she's eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week to afford these performance pieces. The cognitive dissonance is staggering, but she's so invested in the persona that she can't admit the truth even to herself. Watch how she talks about money. She'll complain about being broke while simultaneously refusing to adjust her spending or lower her standards. She wants the lifestyle without the income to support it, and she genuinely believes the universe owes her a solution. She's mastered the art of social financing, using men to subsidize her lifestyle without calling it what it is. The dinner dates aren't about connection, they're about eating well without paying. The gifts aren't about affection, they're about maintaining her image without the financial means. Some have discovered the sugar daddy economy, monetizing their youth and beauty with older men who can fund their fantasies. But even this transactional relationship gets reframed in her mind as knowing her worth rather than what it actually is, selling herself to maintain a lifestyle she can't afford. Others have turned to platforms like OnlyFans, convinced they're building an empire by selling sexual content to lonely men online. They call themselves entrepreneurs and business owners, but they're actually participating in the oldest profession while pretending it's empowerment. The most delusional have convinced themselves they're investing in their brand when they're actually just accumulating debt to maintain an image that generates no real income. They attend expensive networking events, pay for professional photo shoots, and hire social media managers, all while having no actual business to promote. Jung would recognize this as a complete disconnection from economic reality. She's living in a fantasy where wanting something creates the means to have it, where image is more important than substance, and where debt is just delayed abundance. The crash is inevitable. Beauty fades, credit limits are reached, and reality eventually demands payment. But instead of preparing for this inevitability, she doubles down on the fantasy, believing that somehow, somewhere, the resources will appear to validate her lifestyle. She's not just psychologically delusional, she's financially suicidal, and our culture celebrates her for it. Jung discovered that the human psyche has a built-in mechanism for avoiding painful truths about ourselves. When we can't face our own limitations, our own mediocrity, our own responsibility for our circumstances, the ego creates what he called a false persona. This persona isn't just a mask we wear for others, it's a delusion we sell to ourselves. I'm special. I deserve better. The problem is everyone else. In Jung's time, society provided enough external pressure to keep this delusion in check. You had to prove your worth through actual contribution. But we've built a culture that validates the delusion, that profits from it, that encourages it. Social media gives unlimited validation for existing. Dating apps provide endless options that make everyone feel like they're settling. Self-help culture tells everyone they're already perfect, exactly as they are. We've created the perfect psychological environment for what Jung feared most: mass inflation of the ego. Notice how our culture has redefined confidence. Real confidence comes from competence, from facing challenges and overcoming them, from building something valuable and knowing your capability. But we've replaced this with what Jung would call pseudo-confidence, confidence based on nothing but the assertion of worth. I'm a queen. I know my worth. I deserve the best. These aren't statements of genuine self-worth. They're mantras designed to avoid the hard work of actually building worth. Jung warned about this exact phenomenon. He said when people lose touch with their shadow, their limitations, their flaws, their areas for growth, they become psychologically dangerous, not dangerous in an obvious way, dangerous in a subtle way that destroys relationships, communities, and ultimately themselves. Because entitlement without competence creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. I used to think entitled behavior was just selfishness, just bad character. Then I started studying Jung's work on the shadow and projection, and I realized something that changed everything. The most entitled people aren't necessarily bad people. They're people who are so terrified of facing their own inadequacy that they've constructed an elaborate psychological defense system. That defense system has become their prison. But here's what really opened my eyes. I recognized this pattern in myself. Not in the same way, but the psychological mechanism was identical. The ego protecting itself from uncomfortable truths by creating elaborate justifications for why I deserved things I hadn't earned. We all have this capacity for self-deception. The difference is, some people build their entire identity around it, while others learn to recognize it and choose differently. Watching women trapped in this pattern isn't satisfying, it's tragic, because underneath all the entitlement and demands is usually a person who desperately wants to be loved and valued, but has never learned how to create genuine worth. She's not evil, she's lost, and our culture has made it profitable to keep her lost rather than help her find her way home to reality. Jung didn't just diagnose the problem, he found the cure. He called it shadow work, the process of consciously confronting the parts of yourself you don't want to see. For the entitled person, this means facing 3 uncomfortable truths. First, you are not special by default. Specialness is earned through contribution, competence, and character. Second, the world doesn't owe you anything. Every good thing in your life is either earned or given as grace. Neither is guaranteed. Third, your feelings of deserving something don't create objective reality. Reality exists independent of your expectations. Jung went deeper. He realized that true psychological health requires what he called individuation, becoming a complete person who can hold both their light and their shadow. For women caught in this pattern, individuation means developing what Jung called the animus, the capacity for logical thinking, personal responsibility, and genuine achievement. Not because feminine qualities are bad, but because a person needs both masculine and feminine psychological functions to be whole. The path out of entitlement requires what Jung called conscious suffering, willingly facing the pain of seeing yourself clearly rather than living in the comfortable lie of inflation. This means acknowledging that your current level of contribution doesn't match your level of expectation. It means accepting that your online persona isn't your real self. It means recognizing that validation from strangers isn't the same as genuine accomplishment. Most importantly, it means taking responsibility for building actual value instead of just asserting that you already have it. Jung believed that true maturity comes when you stop asking what the world can do for you and start asking what you can do for the world. When you stop focusing on what you deserve and start focusing on what you can contribute. This isn't about becoming self-deprecating or losing confidence. It's about building confidence on a foundation of reality rather than fantasy. It's about earning self-respect through actual accomplishment rather than demanding it through social pressure. How do you recognize when you or someone you know is caught in this pattern? The signs are subtle but consistent. Expectations without corresponding effort, demands without reciprocal offering, confidence that crumbles when challenged with reality. The language reveals everything. I deserve, I'm worth, I shouldn't have to. Notice the passive construction. There's no agent of action, no personal responsibility, just cosmic entitlement. Jung's solution is uncomfortable but effective, radical honesty about your actual contributions to the world. What have you built? What problems have you solved? What value have you created for other people? Not what you feel you deserve, not what you think you're worth. What have you actually done? This isn't about becoming self-deprecating, it's about becoming reality-based. When people do this work honestly, the entitlement dissolves naturally. Because real self-worth doesn't need to be asserted, it simply is. Start by auditing your social media. How much of your online presence is about showcasing accomplishments versus creating the appearance of accomplishments? How much is substance versus performance? Examine your relationships. Are you contributing as much as you're expecting? Are you adding value to other people's lives or just extracting value from them? Look at your finances. Are you living within your means or financing a lifestyle you can't afford? Are you building wealth or just managing debt? Most importantly, practice what Jung called active imagination, honestly envisioning the person you would need to become to deserve the life you want, then doing the work to become that person. The goal isn't to eliminate all desire or ambition. It's to align your expectations with your contributions, your lifestyle with your income, and your self-image with your actual accomplishments. Jung understood that psychological health requires a dynamic balance between aspiration and acceptance, between striving and gratitude, between confidence and humility. The entitled person has lost this balance completely, but it can be restored through conscious effort and honest self-reflection. Jung's warning wasn't about women specifically. It was about what happens when any human being loses touch with reality and lives in psychological inflation. Our current culture has made it particularly easy for certain patterns to flourish unchecked. The good news, awareness is the first step toward freedom. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you understand the psychology behind it, you can choose a different path. Not the path of entitlement, but the path of individuation. Not the path of demanded respect, but the path of earned respect. Not the path of cosmic specialness, but the path of actual achievement. Jung believed that facing your shadow honestly was the most courageous thing a human being could do, because it's only when you stop pretending to be something you're not that you can become something you actually are. The woman trapped in this pattern isn't your enemy. She's a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when psychological development stops and delusion takes over. But for those willing to do the work, Jung offers a different possibility, the chance to build a life based on genuine accomplishment rather than manufactured entitlement. The chance to develop real confidence through actual competence. The chance to earn respect through contribution rather than demand it through social pressure. This isn't about settling for less. It's about becoming someone who deserves more. If this perspective challenges how you think about modern relationships and self-worth, let me know in the comments. Hit the like button if Jung's psychology made you see something differently about entitlement culture. And subscribe if you want more deep dives into the psychological patterns that shape our world. Because in a culture that profits from delusion, understanding reality is an act of rebellion.